Greetings, this is Tom Adams from the Writing in Starlight blog. Or if you're watching from America, I suppose you'd say, what's up? If you're here in Middleland, Cumbria, then you'd be greeting each other with how do. Anyhow, I'm deciding to experiment with this whole video blogging idea, and I thought the first thing I could do for you all is give a review of a George Martin book. Here we go, George R.R. Martin, can you see that? So he's got this book called A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. Now, if you know anything about George R.R. Martin, you'll know that he's brought out a whole series of books, part of a septology, I think you'd probably call it. He's written 5 of them, and of course the whole series has been televised for HBO Network, and everyone waits on tenterhooks every year for the latest season to come out. It's got to such a stage, because of George Martin's slow style of writing, he's a bit of a pantser, it's happened now that the series has extended beyond the book timeline. So George Martin's been advising them about how the story ends, but we could well see a situation where the books have different storylines diverging even more as time goes on. Anyhow, I came across this author through the TV series. I was hooked in it almost from the word go. The thing I have about George Martin is that he's written these books, and I know that it's going to be a long time before the next one comes out, so I've held off reading, I think, his 5th one, which is called A Dance with Dragons. And holding things off in that sort of way could be likened to tantric sex. What, I hear you say? Tantric sex with George Martin? Perhaps too much information, but you know what I mean. I'm delaying the treat. So I needed something to bridge the gap, and Night of the Seven Kingdoms, I saw it on Amazon one day, and I thought, well, this might just do the job. So I decided to purchase the hardback. It's a long time since I've read a physical book, and I must admit I welcome very much the fact that you can hold the thing in your hands. It's a good solid hardback version here, and of course it's got that beautiful smell that good books have. So the book comprises of 3 novellas which George Martin had printed or published separately on a previous occasion, but they come together quite nicely. It features 2 main characters. The first is a hedge knight, which is sort of like a common or garden knight that's just managed to sort of gain his spurs and has to sort of wander around the place and seek his fortune, as it were, sort of selling himself off to the highest bidder. The name of that character is Dunk, short for Duncan or Sir Duncan, and he's apparently about 7 foot tall, but unfortunately not very intelligent. The other character is this Squire Egg, who's a little lad, bald, and it turns out, and this isn't too much of a spoiler because it's revealed quite early on, turns out that Egg is none other than Aegon Targaryen, who will be the future ruler of Westeros, sitting on the Iron Throne down there in King's Landing. And as such, the story is quite strange because, of course, Aegon turns into this horrendous tyrant ruler who goes completely mad. And I believe, if I've got the storyline right, he's the one that Jaime Lannister kills and hence gets his name, the Kinslayer. But in this story, he's very much the goody. So it's a bit like the Scorpion King in reverse. You know, the Scorpion King that featured The Rock, you know, that famous muscle-bound bloke. And in the film, he's, of course, the hero, the protagonist. But if you watch The Mummy 2, then he gets resurrected by Imhotep, the mummy, and he's sort of this extra character who's a monster and has to be slain. So it's a device that's been used by artists before. If any of you are fans of the Canadian power prog rock trio Rush, you'll know that their 2nd album, Fly By Night, features an epic track called Bytor and the Snow Dog. Great track if you want to have a listen to it. Anyway, Bytor is the baddie in this one, and Snow Dog's the hero, and Bytor gets defeated in the end and has to return to hell. And yet in the 3rd album, which was Caress of Steel, then there's a song called The Necromancer, where Bytor actually becomes the hero and rescues the 3 men from Widow Dale, who happen to be Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson and Neil Peart. So this sort of role reversal thing's happened before. I'm pretty sure it isn't a conscious thing on the part of George Martin, but it certainly makes for some interesting reading and sort of fills out these characters to realise that they're all not thoroughly evil, and there is a plot arc there that extends over many books. Now, a bonus, which I didn't realise I was getting until I received the book, is that it's illustrated, and it's illustrated by a great artist called Gary Gianni. And I don't know if you can see any of the drawings up on there. There we go. They're sort of line drawings, and I guess people fall into two camps on this, because some people don't like the characters visualised, because they like to sort of think what they're like in their imaginations. But for me, this was a real boon, because they're introduced right from the beginning. There's dozens of these illustrations. They remind me very much of Savage Sword of Conan, when John Buscema and Alfredo Alcala used to do the artwork way back in the 60s, I think it was, or possibly the 70s. Another example is where Tolkien produced his own line drawings for The Hobbit, and I used to enjoy looking at those. It gave me a clue as to what he was writing about. The only other comparison I've got is the artist Gustave Doré, or Doré, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it, but he is, I think, a 19th century artist who illustrated books like Dante's Inferno. I'll put a few examples of his work on this video for you to see. So that was very much a plus for me, and certainly increased my reading enjoyment. Now, here's the thing, and this might be a downer for some of you, but it didn't work out that way for me, and that is that this book doesn't contain anywhere near the amount of violence. It's nowhere near as graphic as the Game of Thrones series, and it doesn't actually have any sex at all. I think the closest the romantic side of the storyline goes is when Dunk receives a kiss off the Scarlet Lady, I think she's called. That's as far as it goes. So as such, it's got a sort of YA young adult sort of feel to it. But it's good. It's good writing. It certainly transported me into the world of Westeros as it was about a century before Game of Thrones happened. And I really enjoyed it. So overall, and actually I wanted to say this, that if you get hung up on the idea of George Martin's whole world building and his family trees, which are so sort of ponderous and labyrinthine and takes you ages to get to know who's who, I tend to just treat that as a bit of white noise at first, and then if there's a character that keeps coming up, then I'll pay more attention to them. And it sort of gives the feel that you are part of a bigger world. But I don't pay too much attention to the names, because I think unless I actually had the family tree drawn out in front of me, I wouldn't be able to keep track of it, and probably it wouldn't be worthwhile anyway, because some of these characters are just mentioned as a legend or part of the family history. So it's quite a quick read for a thick book. I thoroughly recommend it. If I was putting a review on Amazon, I'd probably give it 4 stars. So it's not quite up there with Game of Thrones, but it's an exceptionally good read, and it got me thinking that when I compare Martin's writing with a lot of wannabes, if you like, putting their foot or dipping their elbow into the fantasy spectrum, it's so much more professionally done. There's no melodrama. You get the idea that there's action there's history, there's well-rounded characters, but it avoids cliche. So if you like George Martin, you're definitely going to like this particular book. So that's all I've got. Quite a short video for this first one. I hope you liked it. Do subscribe to this channel. It depends what device you're on, I suppose, whether you can subscribe at the top right if you're on the iPad, or down below if you're on the PC. But leave me your comments, send me messages, tell me what you liked, what you didn't like about this video blog, and who knows, you might get another one fairly soon in the future. So, as Stanley would say, Excelsior, and I will see you again.